Informative interview with Kenneth Robert Sharp, elderly caregiver associate. What drew me to him was when he took care of it, as he was taking care of his grandfather, I would see him in the grocery store. And I would oftentimes get there as they were getting there and watch how he helps his grandfather get into the grocery store. And I would oftentimes watch how they get around the grocery store because his grandpa has a little bit of mobility issues. He is up there in that age. But it's also due to the lack of physical activity. I later found out when I started asking him. So they're physically doing workouts every day, which is a very important aspect of being an elderly person. Without movement, you can't do much. So you have to consistently keep your body moving to stay in shape and to be able to keep your mobility and mental acuity with you. You have to challenge yourself on a daily, which is ironic because that's kind of what you have to do as you were younger too. So it's very interesting how it carries on and how important just that simple habits or those two simple habits could be throughout your later years in life. Later on, when I was able to exchange numbers with him, I asked him what inspired him to continue to be a caregiver, and he explained to me that he was taking care of his grandfather. His grandfather is a veteran, and with him being a veteran, he would go into a veteran's home. Well, when he was younger, his aunt used to be part of the caregiving community, and his aunt would tell him often stories about how the medicines of the elderlies would disappear. Oftentimes narcotics or painkillers, they would disappear or get sold on the market, and it would be often the caregivers themselves that would take it. Or maybe jewelry would end up stolen, or something personally valuable would disappear and no one could find it. And oftentimes it would again be the caregiver, or sometimes it would be a family member. But for the most part, when it comes down to it, it would be the caregivers that would make it disappear. Not saying that the theft out there is very high for caregivers in certain facilities. That's a whole different area for me to talk on. I asked him what helps him keep going on the hard days with his grandfather, because he did explain to me sometimes when his grandfather is sick, it is very hard to keep going because sometimes he can be sick for days, sometimes it could last a month, and when that's happening, you're on call 24/7. Every 2 hours you're checking in on them and you're hardly getting sleep yourself. And he's the only caregiver for his grandfather. He told me that he does not want his grandfather to end alone and for him to be isolated away from family, because he lives in Yuma, Arizona, and all of his other family members live in Nevada, which is about a 6-hour drive right there. And he understands that with that distance comes the lack of family coming by to see and communicate and check in on him, which would then put him into a care home. And he just couldn't see that happening. So he went to go live with his grandfather to help him recuperate and have someone to actively live with him throughout the time that he decides to stay in Arizona. There's 3 primary lessons that I learned from this, from speaking with Bobby regarding the caregiving aspect. The first thing that I learned was taking care of their medicine is something you have to take in control. You can leave it in their hand, but you have to watch them take it, because oftentimes they can mix up medicine or misplace medicine, and that's just something you don't want to deal with. Another thing was hygienic practices and keeping them healthy and clean, but not too clean, because their skin gets thinner the older they get, so you can tear them, especially if they're getting wet often enough. Their skin can get torn, it can leave abrasions. It's just not something you want to really just experience. So you have to find the perfect balance, as well as taking into account their physical activity and their mental stimulation. Again, he stressed upon me how important that is for them to remain sane. They have to have the mental challenges you would as a younger person would growing. So you have to stimulate yourself physically and mentally to keep your physical capabilities up and your mental capabilities up. And that was something I found interesting, because that carries over from being young into your older years. Thank you for your time.